This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
So I've been looking at this Browns front seven for a little bit, and I've found an interesting trend here when you look at how Jim Schwartz is trying to build this front seven, because I think Jim Schwartz is using the championship template that he had in Philadelphia to kind of inspire him in Cleveland. Now, like most templates, right, it's not a one-to-one copy of what they were trying to do. There are going to be some instances where the Browns are going to have a player who's much better than the one who filled that role in Philadelphia, try to fill that role in Cleveland. There are going to be times where, both had pretty good players filling a role, but one player's way better, vice versa, right? But I think the template is still intact, especially in the front seven, and I think that's where it's most interesting for this team. So that's kind of what I want to talk about, how Jim Schwartz is attempting to build a championship quality defense again in Cleveland, one that is not just championship quality, but I think one that is sustainable for the Cleveland Browns, because you're not relying on a lot of one-year deals like they were in 2023. It's not a lot of duct tape holding this defense together. This is a lot of, nails and screws and whatever you use to hold stuff together for a long, long time, or whatever your preferred material is. This isn't a temporary solution. This seems like permanent solutions. So let's start with the defensive line, right? If we look at that 2017 Philadelphia Eagles team, Brandon Graham, Timmy Jernigan was one of the defensive tackles. Vinnie Curry was the other edge. They had Fletcher Cox kind of holding down that interior. And I think if you look at this Browns defense and how they've been building it, you can see a similar template start to form in the Browns defensive line room, especially. Now, when it comes to who's the Brandon Graham equivalent, I don't think there's any question. It's Myles Garrett. Myles is the ace, the featured player of this edge rush or this pass rush. Anything you're doing that you want to hit at its highest success rates, you're going to involve Myles Garrett, and he is your ace in the hole. He's your number one guy. He's the dude you're going to rely on a ton. That's the role that Myles Garrett plays here. I think Myles is a better version of that than Brandon Graham, although they are very different players. It's not an apples to apples comparison. They're pretty different things. But if we just look at how they're viewed around the league, Myles Garrett is viewed as the best defensive player in football. Brandon Graham was viewed as a really good edge rusher, right? Like, no disrespect to Brandon Graham. I think he's probably going to have an argument to be in the Hall of Fame here. But Myles Garrett is a no-brainer, right? Like, he could retire today and be in the Hall of Fame in 5 years. So you have Myles Garrett holding down that ace position. Both these guys have some similarities and everything, but the way you use Myles isn't going to be exactly one-to-one how you use Brandon Graham. I just think he fulfills that main basic role. How you utilize each player within this role is going to be way different, but it's that same kind of position, right? The ace of the edge rush, that's Myles Garrett. It was Brandon Graham in 2017 for the Philadelphia Eagles. Remember that team, defensive-led team, won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles as the quarterback, the Philly special year against Tom Brady. So Myles Garrett, Brandon Graham, pretty easy comp to see there. If we go in the interior, this is where it gets a little bit interesting, right? Because Mason Graham, to me, is going to fulfill the same kind of like role as like a Timmy Jernigan field, but I think their hopes for Mason Graham in the future are much greater than Timmy Jernigan, right? So I'm not saying that I'm saying Mason Graham's going to be Timmy Jernigan. I'm saying right now, this year one, where they're trying to work Mason along, they're just going to want him to kind of be a Timmy Jernigan-like player, right? An all-around defensive tackle who can hold his own in the run game, hold his own in the pass rush, and kind of be serviceable there. And then Mike Hall is the guy that I think they're going to put in that Fletcher Cox role where he's going to be a primary pass rusher from the interior because he's just more ready to do that right now, given his second year in the NFL and he has that fast twitch, right? Now, that might change. We might get the camp, put the pads on, and be like, oh, Mason Graham's the best pass rusher on the interior defensive line, and he's going to usurp Mike Hall for that role, which I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. There's a reason why Mason Graham went number 5 overall. He was a dynamic pass rusher at Michigan, tremendous bend for somebody at that 3-tech position. I think he's become one of the most underrated picks of this draft. Like, I think people have not talked about him a ton because people don't know how to talk about defensive tackles in general. Like, I think line-to-line literacy in sports media is not great, right? We're talking about offensive line, defensive line, but people like generally don't understand just how impactful a defensive tackle can be to a football team. Me personally, if you watch enough of this channel, you know I don't have that opinion. I love defensive tackle play. I love defensive line play. I think defensive tackle play is super important. If I see another 3-tech on another team playing balling, I always highlight that in my film review so you can see just what the impact is, right? This is a domino guy, right? That's what he did at Michigan. He was able to just knock over dominoes and ruin plays on a consistent basis. Doesn't mean he's always going to get the stat associated with that, but if you watch the film, you can see that he's the one wrecking the dominoes. So would it be surprising Mason Graham was able to usurp that if he just was ready right now? But since it's a line position, right? And linemen in the NFL tend to come along a lot slower than skill players in the NFL. I'm going to be cautious, put him in a smaller role in year 1 and let the year 2 guy get that pass rush role. And then Isaiah McGuire and Vinny Curry, I think, are in very similar spots, right? Isaiah McGuire, run defender, focus guy. If you look at his run defense grades from PFF, he was in the top 3. I think he was only behind TJ Watt last year in PFF grade. And then if you look at his run stop percentage, he's in the top 12 of edges. Well, in the top 30 of edges. When it comes to run stop percentage, he's a pretty solid run defender. Vinny Curry, who was the same thing for the Philadelphia Eagles, right? A solid run defender, was in the top 15, I think, in run stop percentage, had a lower PFF grade the year they won the Super Bowl than Isaiah McGuire. Whichever one of those metrics you value more, you value, but the ideal is they want to have kind of a run defender presence opposite of their ace in Brandon Graham, and that's what Vinny Curry did. I think Isaiah McGuire fulfills that same role, right? He's going to be a run defender opposite of their ace in Myles Garrett, right? That consistent presence on that opposite side to kind of control teams from trying to just run away from Myles Garrett. And if we look at the linebackers, I think this is where it becomes a super clear template that they followed. I think Jason Tarver and Jim Schwartz have worked closely on this, and I think it shows when you look at the linebacker room. Devin Bush, who was really good in run defense, right? He plays that Sam linebacker position. Behind him is Mahmoud Diabate, who was 9th in run stop percentage last year as well. If you look at the Super Bowl team that the Eagles had, they had Nigel Bradham, who was that Sam run-stopping kind of linebacker. The Browns have multiple guys who could fulfill that role. Devin Bush, Mahmoud Diabate, probably going to have to see both of them because Devin Bush might get suspended because he had another DV case pop up, I think, in the spring. So we'll see what happens there. The Mike linebacker for the Eagles in 2017 was Jordan Hicks. The Mike linebacker for the Cleveland Browns in 2025 is Jordan Hicks. I think they compare pretty favorably to each other. So that part is clear. And then Carson Schlesinger, who will eventually be the Mike linebacker for the Cleveland Browns, is probably going to pay a lot of coverage linebacker, right? Like some of the stuff you're going to have him doing in run defense, but really it's going to be about how well he can move, his athleticism, his coverage ability, and then you're going to move him up as he perfects that role. And then you can kind of just see clearly what they're doing, how that's identical to what they tried to do in Philadelphia, right, with how they built that front seven. And that's what I mean by Jim Schwartz is trying to build that championship template that he used in Philadelphia, a defense that legitimately did carry a team to a championship. One of the few examples in the last 20 years of that happening. And you can see him putting those blocks together, right? Mason Graham is this guy. Isaiah McGuire is that guy. Mike Hall is that guy. And the good part about this is we're talking about in that front seven, 5 of these guys under rookie deals or long-term deals, right? Devin Bush is 1 in, 1 out, right? Jordan Hicks is an older player. Maybe you keep him as you go forward. Maybe you don't, but that's where Carson Schlesinger steps in. You could draft somebody to be the replacement. But already we're talking about most of that core being easy to retain over time and cheap, right? So it's there. I can see the building blocks there, in some cases more than building blocks there for this defense and what the Browns are trying to build and how it resembles what the Eagles were trying to do. And I think that's why I feel like Jim Schwartz, or what I feel like Jim Schwartz is trying to accomplish. He's trying to replicate his best period of success, and he's doing that the right way, in my opinion, by going after guys in the draft to fulfill those key roles on the defensive line. Like if Mike Hall looks as good in extended time that he did last year, if Isaiah McGuire looks as good for a whole season as he did last year, if Mason Graham can live up to being that number 5 pick, then you will have one of the best, if not the best, defensive lines in football for the entire duration of that Myles Garrett extension. You'll be in a fantastic place. By the time you would have to pay Isaiah McGuire, you're free of the Deshaun Watson contract. You're free of the burden, the albatross that's been sitting over the neck of the Cleveland Browns. So you're going to be able to retain this over time, right? This is an excellent situation for the Cleveland Browns. Now, with the linebacker room, where they have been successful with these duct tape solutions, and in the NFL, you only have so much money to give out. You're going to have to duct tape some part of the team, right? But you can even see in the linebacking room where the Browns have made these moves to kind of extend the longevity of it, right? Carson Schlesinger is there. That's a play to get this room right. Maybe JOK comes back, maybe he doesn't, but you're not in a dire situation because JOK doesn't come back. You're in a position where you can continue to draft young linebackers, develop them. Mahmoud Diabate is a player you can retain for the cheap, who has been a solid run defender in his time as a Cleveland Brown and can play some of that Sam position stuff, and even do some Mike linebacker stuff, right? You have a lot of flexibility, and I really do think that they're doing a much better job building this defense in year 2 and 3 of Jim Schwartz than they had, those first 3 years of Andrew Berry, right? The 2 Joe Woods years and that first Jim Schwartz year, where I thought, long-term wise, they didn't do a great job of building that to be super sustainable. But since 2023, I think they've really invested, right? Better picks than Siaki Ika up front. You get Mike Hall, Mason Graham, real investments there on the defensive line. And I think real investments in that front seven in general are going to lead to Jim Schwartz trying to be able to get that template that he wants to have a Super Bowl caliber defense. Now, would the offense live up to it? Is as this defense develops into that Super Bowl defense, I think that's the hope, right? That by 2026 or 2027, the Browns have quarterback answered, have this offense in a much better place, and can pair that defense with a championship offense and hopefully win a championship sooner than later. But that's a couple of years from now, right? Right now, you're looking at them putting together the blocks in place to build their championship defense so that it's there waiting for the offense once they're ready. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Is Jim Schwartz using this template to build a championship defense in Cleveland? Let me know. You have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.